Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Late Night Table Talk. My name's Eric Yurko. I'm going to be your host, and it's approaching midnight in Cairo, so we should probably get started. Joining me tonight is the near legendary content creator, Ruel Gaviola. Super excited to talk to him. Always a blast. Great dude, and I'll have more to say about him shortly. Before we get to that, I also want to talk a bit about what's going to keep happening on this show moving forward. So, as you might have guessed from the previous 5 episodes, we were in sort of the pre-season phase. I'm going to call this loosely Season 1, because, you start counting at 1, and I don't really have a better option than that. And we're going to sort of see how it plays out. I'll probably do these monthly unless something comes up that changes that, and I enjoy doing them. Enjoy getting a chance to talk to y'all, so we'll see how it shakes out. But yeah. So, since Ruel is joining us, I figured it might be a good idea to talk a little bit about content creation, and also sort of the steps and process if you wanted to get into content creation. So when I talk about content creation, I usually talk about either written content, video content, podcasting, somewhere in that sphere around board gaming or tabletop gaming. There are, of course, exceptions to this. There's Sugar High Score, which makes incredible cakes based on different aspects of board games, video games, that sort of cultural stuff. She's fantastic. Please check out her work. It's incredible, and I feel like we could all use a good cake right now. But largely the majority of content creators I see fall into one of those 3 camps. I don't see a lot of content creators creating really jazzy PowerPoints or something. Although, again, if you do, it's an interesting niche. You could probably pull it off. When we talk about how to get into it, so occasionally people will ask, how did you get started? How do you get into it? How do you maintain it? And I wanted a chance to talk a little bit about that today, in case that's the sort of thing you're interested in hearing more about. If you're not interested in hearing more about it, just skip about 5 minutes further in, and I'll be talking to Ruel pretty much after this. So when we talk about getting started, I got started mostly on the written side. I am doing a little bit of video content now, although it hardly counts because it's not really reviews or opinions on games. It's more a metacultural approximation of that. You do what you can. But I got started on the written side. So I write reviews, I do photography, and most of it was I had a good friend who talked to me about, I was looking for something to do, had a little bit of too much free time, and she was writing at the time, so she said, have you ever considered writing? And I was like, well, what would I write about? And she's like, do you have anything that you enjoy? I'm like, well, I do have a lot of board games, and she's like, why not write about that? And that was 685 reviews ago? Yeah, that sounds about right. So now I mostly do written content for What's Eric Playing. As a result of that, of course, when you're writing a review for the first time, you have some inclination to say, oh, I need these photos for Catan. Let me go on Google search, Bing search, whatever search you like to use, and look up images for the game so I can use them in my review. And then you quickly realize that's a high-key copyright violation depending on who you're taking the images from. So I had to start taking my own. So I had a camera, learned how to use it, started editing, and that's basically where the photography business sprang from as well. So I only give this story to illustrate that there are very many barriers to entry for content creators in terms of just free time, availability of games, sort of getting your stuff online, being able to attend conventions. But if you can clear those hurdles pretty well, there is a fairly good ramp into it if you just start making stuff. So the first thing that I hear, both from myself, for instance, when I was making this, and from other people is, but what if the thing that I make is bad? Well, I've had the chance to go back and read some of my old reviews. I don't watch these terribly because I don't love the sound of my own voice. It's a video thing. We don't have to talk about it. But I've gone back and read through some of my old reviews, and they are fine. But the best way to get better at something is to keep doing it, right? Sort of that loose 10,000 hours rule. So I think that if you really start focusing on creating something, you can start refining it. It's much easier in my mind to refine something that already exists than it is to try and develop something from scratch. So let's talk about that process. So if you're looking to get started, the first thing that you really need to think about is, what am I going to focus on? Are you going to focus on like session reports? Are you going to write up games that you've played? Are you going to do reviews? Are you going to interview friends? Are you going to just, do live plays? All things that are very good, but they all require different foci on what you want to do. So once you've got something laid out, you kind of just need to do a few things. I'd say try a few different ideas and see what feels right. If you've got a good sense of what you enjoy, that usually helps. So like, I enjoy talking with other people, so I'm doing an interview series. I also enjoy writing, so I write. Between those two, we've got a pretty good set of what content is Eric feeling like making. I don't particularly enjoy other aspects of that stuff, so I tend not to make that too much of my like overall time sink. Once you've got that, a lot of it's consistency. So the best thing you can do is scheduling. What I try to advise every content creator to do is to essentially make a schedule of content and try to push it maybe 3 to 4 weeks in advance, so that way you can get a good buffer. So for instance, let's say that you had a very good thing going with reviewing. You were reviewing, you were gaming, you got your game group going, and then suddenly out of nowhere, a near catastrophic global pandemic hits. At that point, if your top priority is content creation, which if that's true, incredible, what a blessing. But if your top priority is content creation, then it helps to have a significant buffer, so that way you can pull content from that buffer without having to stress about where the next review, where the next playthrough, etc. is coming from. I think that due to the intricacies of editing video, this is maybe a little bit, depending on the complexity of your writing and the complexity of your video, a little bit easier for written folks, just because it takes me maybe 3 to 5 hours to write a review. It might take some of my friends on the video side significantly longer, especially if they're doing their own graphics, doing their own animation, or etc. But if you can even get a couple weeks ahead, this is going to lower your stress pretty significantly, because you don't have to worry about where that next component is coming from. And then once you've got yourself sort of established, you get yourself sort of consistent, then we start talking about things like review copies. Where do review copies come from? That's an interesting question. I know that there are a lot of content creators and a lot of publishers that have already had a lot of thoughts on these. Suzanne posted a great thread on Twitter the other day, Suzanne Sheldon of the Dice Tower, talking about essentially a good way to think about approaching a publisher. And I think that you're going to see essentially a mix of both. So you may get some Kickstarter publishers, other publishers reaching out and saying, hey, we really like your content, we'd love if you covered one of our games. You may also need to go to publishers that you want to cover and say, hey, I'm a big fan of your games, I've already created content on these things, I would love the opportunity to create content for this, let me know if that's something you're interested in, and we can discuss further details from there. Generally trying to keep the email back and forth as low as possible helps a lot of people, especially now. But once you're doing that, stay consistent, keep to commitments that you make, and try to work with other people. And that's pretty good setup. The next step is really sort of building up a community from there. So some people do Facebook groups, some people do, just Patreon pages, some people just interact on Twitter and scream into the void there. That's my personal favorite. And figuring out what your community niche helps a lot as well. So do you want to have a Facebook page? Do you want to have a group? Do you want to just hang out on Twitter? Do you need your own Discord or Patreon? Do you need your own Slack? Different strokes for different communities, especially if you're not working alone. So a lot of the advice that I'm giving also comes from the perspective of someone who mostly works alone. So I don't necessarily have a collaborator that I need to coordinate with. If you're coordinating with a collaborator, especially a distance collaborator right now, this may introduce further complexity into the process, and you kind of need to sync up a bit more with them. But yeah, I think that on the content creation side, as I mentioned, there are obvious systemic barriers to content creation for a lot of folks, given things like income, given things like access, given things like, even something as seemingly straightforward as having a consistent broadband internet connection, and given the complexities of the current situation, such as childcare, how your children are doing with schooling, and etc. Those are all things that I think are really challenging right now. Even not in this time that we would have other challenges like access to conventions. So for better or for worse, it does help you a lot as a content creator if you can go to a fair number of the conventions that are happening during the year, right? So there's Gen Con, Origins, Dice Tower West, OrcaCon, KublaCon, StrategicCon, PAX Unplugged, a whole handful of conventions and smaller conventions that are local to various places across the country. It's better for networking, it's better to meet publishers face to face, but obviously for a lot of people, in-person conventions are not ideal and not the best fit for them, and that presents a challenge. And I think that we've been trying virtual cons a fair bit this year, but I'm still not 100% convinced that we have good plans in place for building up that accessibility pipeline for new creators once things get back to some semblance of normal. So I think that if you're looking to start creating content, especially now or in the near future, it's worth considering how you're going to deal with these different barriers, these different access level problems. But if you are ever looking to start content, if you're looking for advice or if you're looking for just a quick, does this sound like an interesting idea? Does it sound compelling? Feel free to reach out on Twitter. That's usually where I'm at anyways. I'd love to hear more about what you're thinking about, and I'm always excited about new voices entering the content creation community. Anyway, that's a lot of talk about content creation in the abstract, so let's move on to our next segment. So let's bring on our guest tonight, Ruel Gaviola. Ruel is an absolute powerhouse in the board game media space, with credits essentially everywhere. He's on Geek and Sundry, he does video work for Renegade, he's on the 5x, he does the American Tabletop Awards, Rolling with Ruel, Tabletop Tonight, Top 3 at 3, probably 3 more things that I didn't even think of. Honestly, if you're not watching, listening, or reading something by Ruel, he's probably making content right now that you would be into. On top of it all, if that was just it, that would be great. But he's also just hell of a dude. Super nice guy, probably one of the nicest dudes I've met, and just an absolute blast to talk to. I'm super excited to talk to him. That said, it's probably going to be more interesting to listen to him talk about what he's doing than me talk about what he's doing. So let's get to it. Please welcome Ruel to Late Night Table Talk. All right. Hey, Ruel, thanks so much for being on the show. How's it going?
Good, Eric. Thanks for having me. Really happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have you on. It's been, I think that the sort of the circle of life of content creation is you're on someone else's show, they're on your show, you're on their show again, and we just sort of end up on each other's shows until the end of time, right? I feel like that's the beautiful cycle of the whole thing.
Yes, we have started the infinite loop, my friend. So here we go.
Influencer infinite loop. That's the dream, honestly.
Totally.
So I know that I talked a little bit more about this earlier in the show before you were on, but I'd say what are you up to? But I know that what you're up to is a vast and diverse set of things. So what's the highlights? What's been happening?
Yeah, wow. Just keeping busy. And, I joke around with Michelle. We joke around a lot, actually, about how, all the stuff I'm doing now keeps me out of trouble, right? So it definitely keeps me out of trouble. And it's just, oh, man, I don't know where to begin. It's, I think I say yes to too many things sometimes,
That's a mood.
which can be a problem. And I'm realizing now that I need to scale back a little bit on some of the things I do, but that's fine. That's just part of the process. I'm learning as we go, just like a lot of us are, whether, with everything that's going on. And, but yeah, as far as what's happening with me, it's still live streaming on Twitch a bunch. And that's the one consistent thing. Monday through Thursday, 7 p.m. Pacific, I'm on Twitch. These days, a little bit more by myself and guests online, because Michelle and Lauren, my family's schedules changed. They've got their work and school schedules a little more set in stone these days, so they're not always able to participate at the time that I like to stream.
Right.
But yeah. So that's pretty much it. That's the big things are just Twitch, and then I've got other projects as well. As you know, I podcast for the 5x, so that's every couple of weeks I release a segment there. And then the writing, I'm doing articles for. I've done some mainly marketing articles for Renegade these days, promoting their products and stuff. And I've got some other things lined up that I can't really talk about right now. As you know, there's certain things you just got to put on the Yeah, you've signed the NDA and everything else like that. But I am excited about some things coming up as well.
No, that sounds exciting. I'm looking forward to reading more about them and seeing more of it. I know that you've been playing a lot of stuff. You were just playing, was it Strike the other day?
Oh, yeah, that's I'd never played Strike
Oh, you
until
hadn't?
until like 2 weeks ago when I got a
Oh
copy.
man.
Yeah, gosh, I had no idea how fun it was,
Oh
and
yeah, no. Everyone hypes it up and you're like, it can't be that fun. And you play it
right,
and you're like, oh, it's funner than that. Like,
totally.
oh man. Yeah, no, I pre everything shutting down, I think I played maybe like 30 rounds of Impact with one of my coworkers. We were just like basically it started getting to the point where we would just increase our distance when we were throwing dice into the little bucket.
Nice.
And we'd be like, all right, I'm just gonna do it from across the room, and it bounces out every time because you obviously can't do it like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, I just got a copy of Full Strike again, and it's been a blast. I had a friend over and we like socially distanced striked. Lots of hand washing. What can you do? But yeah, no, that's a real blast of a game.
Yeah, I was, I'd heard some of the stories of people, people going to conventions, and this was like one of the funnest things they've done at the convention. I can see why now. Michelle, Lauren, and I, we played, I opened it up a couple of weeks ago. We played it once, and it turned into like a dozen games, back to back to back to back. And then,
Oh yeah,
just ever since then, it's just on the table constantly. And
right.
yeah,
Well,
it's just a
it's
quick
so
and easy
easy to
game.
set up. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
No, I love that. I love that entire class of games, right? I always refer to them as sort of, I jokingly call them like rack 'em games, where I'm basically like, you lose, you sort of grunt to the other person, then you're like, rack 'em, we're playing again, and you're
yep.
like, we stop when I win, and that's very much how like I feel like Strike is like that, Santorini is like that for me,
Yeah.
um, even like Push is kind of like that, like
Yeah.
Push just kind of like, ugh, I lost. We're doing this again. We're not ending on this note.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I love games in that sort of category of like just very simple rules. I think even number nine does that pretty well.
It does, and it's funny. Yeah, number nine, and it's funny you mentioned push because just yesterday, before the day we record this, Michelle and I had live streamed a game of Strike, or actually a couple of games of Strike, and then two games of Push as
Oh
well.
no,
And
I do
those.
my research.
Oh, okay, cool. I can see.
Me just
I
casually flexing over here. No, I look up
this is
everything.
I'm working with a professional today. Yes.
Dress for the job.
Right. Exactly. And I do want to say, Eric, thank you for giving me the opportunity to actually dress up. It's been a while since I've dressed up, so this is a nice chance to put on the
Ah,
clothes that have been sitting in the closet for
incredible.
months,
Like,
right?
we look incredible. This is like the dream. I mean, look at us. Look at
Right?
us. Like
Yeah.
who'd have thought?
And and you can only see the top half of us, right? Because I am very comfortable below this. I've got my Adidas sweats on, so yeah.
I'm wearing like a pseudo slack sort of thing. Like it's somewhere between slacks and sweatpants, so it looks enough like slacks. So you're like, look at this cohesive gentleman who's wearing a suit, but also forgot to put on like socks or shoes.
Yeah.
I'm like most of the way there. I just couldn't go outside, which
Same.
All right. So I will ask one more question before we move on to the next. I hate it when people ask me this question, but thankfully, since we're on my show, I can always ask it. So I'll tweak the parameters of it a bit. So what's Ruel playing?
Oh yeah, this is always a tough question to answer. As a fellow content creator, it's pretty much just everything, right? Constant playing games. So I started thinking about the games that have sort of like stuck here in the Gaviola game library, and those are the games that not only do I stream, but the ones that Michelle and Lauren like to play off stream. During like, hey, let's just play a game because we want to play a game.
Mm-hmm.
The first one that comes to mind is Crokinole. Like to me,
Mm-hmm.
greatest dexterity game ever. Got the board there, and that one, like Lauren is obsessed with it almost as much as I am. We're always playing it. It's just, oh, have you played, Eric? Have you played Crokinole?
So no, I haven't, and you know that I'm
Okay.
a dexterity game fiend, so it's very high
Yes.
on my list of like I should really like get around to it at some point.
Ah,
I'm currently a little bit robbed on the dexterity department because since I am mostly playing games remotely, I can play some. So Suzanne and I managed to get a remote game of Sonora working. which took
Yeah,
some
that blows me
doing.
away. That blows me away. You actually did that. Like,
Oh, it was super fun. So all you need to do is you have two top-down versions of it, and you can both see each other's boards, and all you need is just you recreate the board state of the other player's board after every turn.
okay,
And
okay.
like, was it the most incredible experience I've ever had with Sonora?
Yeah,
No. Was it fun and surprisingly passable? Yes. Is
nice.
Suzanne still mad at me because I definitely made some moves that were needlessly jerk? It's easier to measure our relationship in the times that she's not mad at me, and that's fine.
I
These are
love
all these are all my fault. I'll freely admit that.
That's hilarious. Yeah, so I mean, I know that Sonora takes some of its influence from Crokinole,
Mhm.
but you need to play the original.
Oh,
It
absolutely.
amazes me, yeah, that this game's been around over 150 years, and it's just pure just bliss on a table. It's simple. It's like shuffleboard
Mhm.
and curling,
Mhm.
but on this little board, and you're just flicking discs into this hole. It's oh my gosh, Eric, it's so good.
Have you ever
Um,
played Sciolin?
I have not. No, is that
So it's they had it at BGG for a few years, and it's this like big wooden game. So basically, it has some similarities to Crokinole. You've got pucks instead of discs, so you're not flicking because the puck is about the size of my palm, and that
oh
would
wow.
you could do it, but it would hurt. So you're sliding them down maybe this like I want to say 5-6 foot ramp, and there are four little gaps at the end of it. One is like 2 points, one is 3 points, two of them are 1 point, and the gap is almost perfectly the size of the disc. And so you have like a ton of these discs. You want to keep sliding them in. You basically get 3 shots. So you get to slide all the discs. You take all the ones that didn't make it in the gap back. You do it again. You take all the ones that make it in the gap back, and you do it a third time. And then you score whatever you have inside of the gap. So a lot of it's not just you can make it perfectly. Like you can slide some discs through quite nicely, but you also need to hit the discs with other discs to get them through the gap. It is
Oh wow.
similar energy, very fun.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like something I would definitely play.
Oh
Is
yeah,
it sort of like shuffleboard? Like it's just got this long, like you
yeah.
put the sand on there and
Very long.
everything?
I don't think you put sand on, but it's just like
Okay.
let the discs fly. Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't see it last year, and obviously we're not doing BGG this year, but
Yep.
maybe in 2022.
Yeah.
I'm
That's
not.
yeah.
I'm.
That
I'm.
sounds
I'm not
cool.
currently optimistic about 2021.
Neither am I. Neither am I, unfortunately.
Ugh,
But
what a
hey,
bummer.
yeah, we got to deal with it.
Yeah.
These
Yeah.
type of
Fair.
games, like Crokinole and all these type of dexterity games, they always remind me of stuff that I played as a kid, like like either shuffleboard, like foosball or
Mhm.
air hockey, those type of games.
Air
Like
hockey.
yeah, I love those type of games, and
I was too
Crokinole's right
intense
there.
at air hockey when I was younger, and I think I probably like threw out my shoulder, which I think just the phrase "I threw out my shoulder playing air hockey" tells you a lot about how intense I was with it.
Yeah,
But
that's
what can you do?
that's pretty hardcore, man.
Yeah, yeah. We had all these weird ones too. So we had like one of them was like the local bowling alley had this boomerang one, where it's basically you'd both stand on one side of the table, but the table like curved around, and so you try to hit the puck. So it was basically like a way that
Oh,
you could have an air hockey table with half the space. So it was
okay.
a little bit wider as a result, but it had this like neat U shape to it. I saw
Huh.
another one where it's essentially the entire table is like gently curved on both sides so that the puck can like do a bunch of weird like sliding motions. It's weird.
Wow.
I love it.
Are
It's
you still
like
using like the air hockey
oh
paddles
yeah,
to like hit
absolutely.
the? Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
It's like Bonk or Clask as well. I think are good
Okay.
examples in that like dexterity space of games that I really kind of enjoy.
Yeah, yeah. Bonk and Clask are both fun ones as well.
What else you been playing?
So that's the big one, and we talked about Strike, and two one of the games that we got it into recently. Actually, me and Michelle, she really enjoyed. I always want to call it My City, but My City is the legacy game from Kinesia. It's
Right.
the city from Tom Lehman over. I think it's Eagle Griffin.
Oh, okay.
It's
Oh yeah, I
basically
think
the
I know which one you're
precursor.
talking about.
Yeah, it was re-themed into Jump Drive as part of the whole
Mm.
Roll for the Galaxy series. But the city, it's cards. It really reminds me of a simpler version of, or a gateway version of San Juan, the card
Hmm.
game, which was like the card version of Puerto Rico. This is a tableau builder, but you're building cards and you're using your cards to pay for them as well. So it's got this really neat tension of every turn you're going to try to build something and you're generating income based on the cards you've already built. But then the cards you receive, you have to give them up in order to build other buildings. So you're trying to focus, which ones to build right away, which ones to save, and which ones to discard. It's a race to 50 points. And honestly, the game, I thought it would be about 20, 30 minutes. Now, we've done games in like 10 minutes, it's super fast. Yeah, and really enjoyable. I wasn't sure if Michelle would like it. She loved it. We played it maybe like 10 times already in a week or so. So yeah, fantastic game. That one's getting to the table a lot these days.
Yeah, that's always hard to figure out, like, what your main game group is going to like. So, like, for instance, like, I have a coworker who will play basically anything with me. He is not that into Unmatched for some odd reason. I really like Unmatched.
Yeah.
But I'm like, oh, well, who am I supposed to play this 2-player dueling game with now? I'm like, ugh. So I'm just bothering Suzanne and seeing if I can convince her to play it with me.
Hey, I love it. We could totally do that on.
Oh yeah, we should do it.
Over Zoom or something. Let's do it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I want to be very clear here. I am garbage at it.
Good.
The only game that I have won was a game in which I was playing myself, and technically it didn't help my win-loss ratio because I also lost. It's not that I have no strategy. It's that the strategy that I have is specifically wrong for every character, except for maybe Sinbad, and I feel like that was a fluke.
Okay.
Like, I've had a lot of them where I'm just like, yeah, I think I know what I'm doing. I'm like, I clearly do not know what I'm doing.
Hey, that sounds like a perfect matchup then, because I'm terrible at it too. I've lost way more than I've won. So yeah, we'll definitely do that. I would love to play that.
I'm just one and however many games of Unmatched I've played total. Like, I think that's my record is roughly one and all. It's a headache, but it's a fun game. Yeah, I just got I got Cobble and Fog and Buffy, and so I need to I'm super excited for that. I was I was probably a medium level Buffy fan because I feel like it was like I was slightly young for it when it came out, maybe like just a little bit. But my family watched it, so I was watching it too.
Yeah. I really like the Cobble. Was it Cobble and Stone? No, Fog.
Cobble and Fog.
Cobble and Fog. Yeah, that one. The Invisible Man was really neat to play. I like that one a lot.
Yeah, I basically need to I think that I have a friend who I think I'm going to be able to bully into a safe gaming situation at the start of the year. So we're going to get tested, and then we're going to both get negative, both meet up, and I'll just have a crate of games. I'll probably bring all the Unmatched content that I have. So
there you go.
I think I have Bruce, maybe the Jurassic Park one around as well. So all this stuff just in one massive box and being we're doing this. We're just gonna play Unmatched for a little while. Yeah, it should be fun. Yeah,
the games are so quick too. It takes 15, 20 minutes.
We're both terrible at it, so it's always super
right.
We're both I didn't know you could lose that fast.
Yeah. I guess we're gonna have to do another one.
Yeah, just please, sir, hit me again. Oh man. No, I was bad at Arthur. I was bad at Medusa. I think I was bad at Alice. I think I was only okay at Sinbad because I was worse at Alice. It's wild to me. There are very few games that I feel like I am just unfathomably bad at, and Unmatched is definitely on top of that list. I should definitely look up I've got my you do play tracking, I do play tracking.
Yeah.
I have my stats somewhere. I should just look up the games that I lose more than I win and just sort of create a top 10 games I'm terrible at.
That sounds like a great idea for an article right there. There you go.
Just the humility. Something like that.
Love it.
All right. Well, speaking of humility, let's try this next thing. So, our next segment is something that I've been loosely calling Game the Name, both because, ironically, for a naming segment, I haven't really come up with a good name for it, and this seems like a fine name. And generally, if What's Eric Playing is any indication, I generally get to fine names, and then I overthink it, and then I panic, and then I'm stuck. So, Game the Name is what we've been calling it, what we probably will call it for the foreseeable future. So, basically what's going to happen is I'm going to come up with a name. It might be a single word. It might be a random set of words. I really have not thought about it at all yet. So I'm going to like take a second to be like, and then we're going to sort of back and forth try to improv a loose game design until we get to a point where we're both like, well, that's the worst thing I've ever heard, and someone needs to just like gently push this abomination into the garbage, or we're like, this seems like it might be pretty fun, and someone should pay us money to make it. Either way, we win, or we have a horrifying experience. So it's good. We're close enough to Halloween that like making an abomination seems like it's on brand, right?
Very on brand, yes.
Exactly. So okay, let me think here for a second. Let me think here. I'm just looking around. So the best option that I have is looking around my like empty room for inspiration.
Okay.
Okay. So the first thing I'm seeing is a table, which is good. I mean, it's nice to have a table around. And so I'm trying to think of something that isn't just the word table. Let's see here. Okay, yeah. Okay, cool. I got no idea where this is going to go, but we have just been hired by a prestigious company to come up with a game design for the name for a game that is named The Table and the Chair.
The Table and the Chair.
Table and the Chair. Let's see what we can get with that.
The Table and the Chair. Wow.
What speaks to you like mechanically?
Well, of course, right off the bat, I'm thinking dexterity, right? We were just talking dexterity games. So we have a table and a chair, right? How do we go from there? Are we stacking stuff? Shall we actually do a table and a chair, like little minis to stack?
Ooh.
Or
so what it could be is we could either be we could essentially be like home. Oh, that's actually interesting. So what if here's the narrative pitch. We are the players are artists who have been stuck at home due to some circumstance. Let's say, if you can think of anything that fits that mold. And
yeah, you might have to give me a minute on that one.
They need to essentially use the home space, their home, to create a new art exhibit that's going to catapult them to like art fame. Right? Something that's a little bit almost like Oink in its sort of like out there-ness.
Yeah.
Or it's like, so I like the dexterity idea. So what we could do is we could say, you want to create a new like visual art piece, but the only things that you have accessible to you are like essentially a tiny house worth of furniture.
Yeah. I like that. I like that a lot, actually. So we, not only do you have the table and chair, but you have the items that you would find in your home, right? Maybe a sofa and maybe a refrigerator, maybe, whatever you can find in a home, and you're going to, like you said, try to create this exhibit right out of these items in your home. I mean, I don't know how to approach this. Is it dexterity as far as like stacking stuff, or are you just like shifting things around, trying to make like patterns or whatever?
So what we could do is we could do it almost like junk art style, where you, and correct me if I'm wrong, I haven't actually played junk art, I'm just vaguely familiar with it, but do you draw like criteria or like conditions?
I've never played as well, but from my
we're both speculating.
Yeah, we're totally
me. Yes, junk art, the game that I've played. Ruel, yes, I've also played. We could do it like that, right? So like, I like what you're coming from with like, let's think about different ways that we could present it. So we could have maybe like a couple decks of different conditions that are like, okay, so for this round, only one item may be touching the ground, and you have to use at least 5 items in your art piece. And so now it's a stacking game, but another round it's like, okay, the items have to form a perfect square, and you have to use 7 items. So there's maybe a little bit of stacking, but you have some like negative space in there, and you're trying to like do the contemporary thing.
Right. Do we dare throw in a real-time element to this? So like 60 seconds you have to do this, and that equals 1 year of us being enclosed in our homes for whatever reason.
Ooh, you could make that one of the conditions. Like you could add that to a condition card. It's like, oh, now it's real time. So essentially, what you're doing is you're creating an almost Sushi Go style dexterity. So what you could do is you could have like a condition card and a scoring card, right? So the condition card adds a hiccup that you have to include in every round. but then the scoring card gives you points based on how well you satisfied some additional criteria, right? Because
Nice.
I'm almost thinking like Isle of Cats, where you have like a bunch of different like end game scoring cards that you randomly draw, and so sometimes
Yeah.
they just don't work, right? You're like, okay, this needs to be 60 seconds, and you're scored for how many lamps you have. And you're
There
like,
you go.
well, maybe I can. Everyone just gets 1 point this round.
Right. Yeah, I like that idea. We recently played Cartographer's Heroes, and I've always liked that part in Cartographers where you pass your sheet to someone else and they draw the monster and mess you up. Is there something we could do with this where your opponents get to sort of mess with your art exhibit? Maybe they are your rival, artists or dealers or whatever.
So I played a game once, a Korean dexterity game called Pickup Rush, which I
Okay.
think is the right inspiration for the energy that I think you're bringing to this. So basically, what will happen is every round you try to stack up your pieces as quickly as possible, and I think it was if you lost. So if you lost, your opponent got to remove two of your pieces from the game.
Okay.
So it made it easier for you to win, but they were picking which pieces you removed, so they might remove things that give you more stability. So you could either have it that, every round your opponent gets to say, well, I'm the one who's planning this exhibit, and we aren't going to have any sofas in our exhibit. This is a no sofa year. Or maybe they say specifically like, Ruel, I know that you are a man gifted in appreciating a good chair. I would like for you to use as many chairs as possible in your exhibit.
I love it.
And so
I
you get
love
like
it.
additional points around that. It has a little bit of that like animal upon animal energy as well, where
Yep.
you're like passing someone something.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I
Yeah.
think the nice thing is we played enough dexterity games that we can like come up with a nice hybrid of this. But
Right,
I'm
right.
imagining I'm imagining like different versions of this that you could have where it's like one of them's very like modern, like you have like the table and the chair like modern set, like the table and the chair like rococo set, and so you have all these like different like almost like animal upon animal where instead of having like oh, this one has a refrigerator and like kitchen appliances because it's a very like modern steel set. This one has
Yeah.
just a bunch of like lounges and like chases because it's a very like baroque set.
Yeah, and I'm already thinking like the kid-friendly version, right? A kid's room, right? Very,
Yeah.
big
You have bunk
blocky type
beds.
things. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Like the bunk beds my parents would never let me have.
There you
I didn't
go.
like. I wouldn't have enjoyed sharing a room with my sister, so they were correct to not let me have bunk beds. But like,
Yeah.
I'm still mad about it. And I'll be mad about it. Okay, okay. So far, like I said, I feel like we've arrived at a place where this is actually like kind of an interesting concept.
Oh yeah.
So so you've got like a nice hybrid of a few dexterity elements. So to summarize briefly, in the table and the chair, we are artists who have been locked inside of our homes for some period of time due to a mysterious event that we don't have to dig into any further. And we've decided that in that void, we are going to continue to overexert ourselves and create art of some kind in a concept that no one finds relatable. But and so we then are tasked with taking the generic items we find around our house and stacking them, arranging them according to some set of criteria, and then some score with maybe some option for like opponents to influence your set or to influence all other players' sets, depending on how you're building for that particular round.
I would totally play this. I'm telling you
Yeah,
right now, I would
I'm very
totally
much
play
at the
this.
like I would play it. Like
Yeah.
what's the worst that it could be? You stack them and you're like, well, like because you
Yeah.
know that at some point it's gonna have a little bit of that catch the moon like ladder stacking where you're using like weird chair slits to balance like the bridge on top of something else. I think it could work pretty well. It
I
seems the
think so
kind of
too.
thing that like it seems somewhere in like the almost like Jordan Draper adjacent space because I'm just imagining a bunch of like very small furniture.
Right. Totally. On
Yeah.
like popsicle sticks and stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I'm in a very I am once again very pleased to say I think there's something to this. I think this is a good idea. But
Yeah.
like I said, publishers looking for a very specific dexterity game concept, we're available. Hit us up.
That's such a smooth pitch, Eric. I love
Oh,
it. So
what can I
you
say?
got it down,
My
man.
dream is just smooth pitches. Okay, well let's move on to the Q&A. So I do have some questions prepared. So my first one is generally for archival purposes and because I'm interested in this sort of thing. I don't know if I've actually ever asked how you got started in the like board game media space. So can you expand a little bit more on that?
Yeah, be glad to. So 5 years ago, I got into the hobby. Thanks to like a lot of other folks, I saw Will Wheaton on YouTube on his tabletop
Same.
show, right? And he was playing Pandemic, and that's the game that hooked me because I'd never, again, 5 years ago, I was like, wow, what a theme. Now I'm like, ugh, what a theme. But
Relatable.
that game hooked me because of two things: the theme, and then just the fact that it was a cooperative game. I'd never played a cooperative game before. So as a birthday present to myself 5 years ago, I bought it, loved it. Michelle wasn't really into it, so that also got me into solo gaming because I soloed it a bunch. So not only did I get into the hobby that way, but I also got into the hobby of solo gaming as
Mhm.
well. And so I was playing Pandemic, and then eventually got Ticket to Ride. Michelle and I loved that one, and going down the rabbit hole, getting all the other Gateway style games, Gateway Plus. And it was about, I want to say, a few months in, I found the website I Slay the Dragon. They're a website that publishes board game reviews, and they're longer form board game reviews. And they were looking for a writer, not necessarily for reviews, but for someone to do industry news. And I said, hey, my background, I'm a writer, and I did journalism school. I got an English major. I got my English degree, did all that, and I've worked in publication departments in different industries, mainly the aerospace industry. So I had a writing background, and I said, hey, why not write some board game news? That sounds cool. So, I sent in some clips and resume, and Jonathan Wolf over there said, yeah, you're on. So I did that. That's how I got into board game creation, content creation, was through that. The weekly news column eventually became, hey, why don't you write reviews as well? I was like, cool, love to. And I'm also a Yelper, so I don't know if that's still a cool thing to do, but I write Yelp reviews all the time, or I used to write Yelp reviews when we could go out and eat.
You just write
So
Yelp reviews from a distance now. You're like,
yeah, it's like I used to like eating at this place. But yeah, so it's just something that came naturally to me as a writer, and this led to just constantly getting different opportunities. There was a local game group here in the LA area. There was a Facebook group I belonged to. It was, they would just, chat about games and whatnot. And one day someone put out, hey, I've got a friend that works over at Legendary. They're looking for writers. I'm like, okay, cool. I contacted them. One thing led to another, and then I started, Legendary owns Geek and Sundry. So I started writing articles for Geek and Sundry. I started with a series on local game store owners. I interviewed them across the country as part of Tabletop Day, right? We just wanted to highlight owners of different gaming stores, and that was really fun. And that just, again, led to more things. Hey, Geek and Sundry, why don't you start writing about these games that you like, or games that we have that need to be reviewed? So did that for a while, and I was listening to podcasts just like all other board gamers do, and I love the 5 by. I love that format. It was really short and sweet, because there were podcasts at the time that I enjoyed that I got tired of because they went into like 3 hour long episodes, which is fine, I guess. But for me, I just lost interest after like 30, 45 minutes. I'm like, I can't do it. So I got in the 5 by, really enjoyed that format. And after listening to them for a while, Mike, the producer over there, just emailed me one day or messaged me one day and said, hey, would you like to join the team? I was like, of course, I love your show. And yeah. So yeah, that was just one of those things where, okay, now I'm doing that. And, I'm just constantly producing content like this, written, audio. And over at Geek and Sundry, one of my mentors there, Terry, said, hey, would you like to maybe appear on Becca's show? I'm like, wait, what? Yeah, of course. Again, I had no idea what I was doing. I was like, sure. Yeah.
clearly
So
you're doing it well.
yeah, thanks. And for them to go from like written to, basically Game the Game, which is the show that, I thought of, in that whole like tabletop mode, where it's like, this is a show that, generates interest in the tabletop gaming industry, not necessarily for our hardcore gamers, but new gamers and also casual gamers. And I was thrilled to be part of that. And Becca couldn't have been a better host. I mean, she was just so welcoming, the whole crew there. I tell the story a lot, Eric, where I showed up and I was like, wait, this is like an actual studio and they are feeding me. I'm like, can we like do this every day, please? You have catered lunch? Yes. Sign me up. I will do this every day.
That's the dream.
Yeah, it really was a dream. I mean, I'm getting paid to play a game and you're feeding me. Like, forget about it. Like, this is it, folks. So yeah, that just, that led to other opportunities. I've been very fortunate that other publishers and other companies have reached out to me and said, hey, we like to see you in this or that, or we like that. Why don't you do this for us? Like Renegade reached out to me last year. I've never done anything live stream. I've done the videos, I've done podcasts, whatever. But for me to be on live stream, I was like, yeah, I don't really, sure, I'll show up. And, I did it and had a lot of fun with it. We did that until, start of COVID, and then everything just shut down.
Right.
And that led me into what I'm doing now, which is Twitch. I said, why not just try it from home? And I literally started with my phone and just streaming from my phone. And now I've actually, I've built a new computer, got like mics and webcams and stuff. I mean, it's been a really cool journey. It's still sort of, Michelle and I talk about this a lot, actually, where it's really cool to like sort of fall into this whole thing where the industry is like full of good people. I mean, you have your bad apples, of course, like any in the industry, but for the most part, I mean, there's just a lot of good people. I've been very, very fortunate to be a part of it. So yeah, that's how I got into content creation, man.
I think the industry's better for having you in it. I mean, I will say about the computer thing. I am also thinking about like assembling a new one. My computer, not this one, but the personal computer that I use for a lot of my photo editing is, let's call it venerable. Okay. It's definitely it's been around for almost 8 years, and so it's starting to show its age, and I kind of need to either I think I need a new motherboard is basically where I'm at. And so that's just that's a later task once I have the bandwidth again, so probably in 2 years. But if I can, I budgeted for 5 years for that computer, and I think if I can get it to last for 10, I'm going to be very satisfied with it.
Oh, that's great.
The last year is going to be a little rough, but
yeah, the laptop that I've been working on, that's probably about 8 years old as well. So it was definitely on its last legs, and as I got further into live streaming and everything else, it was showing its age, and it was dying. But thankfully I've had some again friends who have helped, and I said, hey, I want to build a computer. Can y'all give me a little help with this? I also have 2 brothers in IT business, so I just talk to them. They'll set me up with hey, this is what you should get, or this is what you should not. Yeah, right. So that helps a lot.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's an incredible journey, and it sounds like you've had a lot of really cool opportunities, which is great.
Yeah. It's just like I say it all the time. I'm very fortunate to be doing what I do.
Yeah. Well, I'm honestly impressed by the sort of scope, depth, breadth of all that you do between writing, podcasting, video, live streaming. There's a lot. So for a lot of the folks who are watching, I guess my next question is, how do you prioritize? So how do you figure out a way to decide what you're going to do, when you want to spin up a new thing, and then what you really want to invest in? What makes it into the core activities?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out every day. It's
that's amazing.
It's because I do have so many things going on at once. I mean, I'll be honest. Sometimes it's just a matter of, okay, what's the biggest fire I got to put out, right now. But I mean, I don't look at it like that as far as fires, but what is on schedule for tomorrow or the next day or next week. So it's a constant juggling act. Again, this is by choice. I enjoy doing everything I do. I enjoy writing. I enjoy podcasting. I enjoy live streaming. I enjoy doing videos. I enjoy, appearing on friends' shows. It's all good, and it's a constant learning process. I'm learning not only how to deal with scheduling and how to say no to certain things, but also I'm learning the technical side to it. I had no idea how to live stream by myself 6 months ago. This is all new to me, and it's a really cool learning process. And I've always been the type that, I stopped going to formal college many years ago, but I'm a lifelong learner. I will pick something up and say, hey, if this is my new obsession, let's get into it. Let's let's see how far I can, what I can learn about this new project. So yeah, as far as what do I prioritize, I wish I had a better answer. It's just whatever, I feel is I need to finish ASAP. I will prioritize that. But I genuinely do enjoy writing, podcasting, live streaming. It's all good.
That's great. Yeah, I think for me it's very similar though. Like when I think about like how I prioritize, I look at the calendar that I built for myself and basically what is the next thing on my calendar that isn't done. And
Yeah,
then every so often like a board game will sort of just reach out of the depths and be like, "No, play me instead," and sort of just push my face out. And that's
yeah,
fine. And that's kind of what's happening with I was playing Noctiluca a couple nights
yeah,
ago.
yeah.
Yeah, I would like I the problem is I have it set out and my brain keeps being like, oh, you should just do the photography that you need to do for it tonight. And I'm like, but I have other things that I have planned. Like I have things I
Right.
need to do.
Yeah.
But I'll
I
probably
mean,
still do it once I cook
yeah,
dinner, but like, I have to eat and that's a major problem. One of my
right.
greatest faults is that I require food in order to live, unfortunately.
Yeah, I feel you on that. But that's one thing I do want to say, Eric, before we continue is like, I mean, like I'm inspired by your output, man. I mean, it's like, the work you do, not only is it, I mean, it's freaking spectacular, but you are a
Thank you.
consistent, you put it out there on a regular basis. And again, it's when I think of what I'm doing, I'm like, hey, I see, I'm like inspired by you and other creators who are consistently good, and that's, it's not like a contest or anything like
No,
that. It's just,
it's a
you
rising
know,
tide.
yeah, it is. It's totally the rising tide. That's, I had actually written that down, rising tide. We all, help each other out by, being good at what we do.
Right.
So, I
And in
mean,
the same way, a lot of people look at your content, including myself, and I'm like, oh wow, we're also doing all this cool stuff. Like I like the fact that we can work together and collaborate on things. I
yep,
appreciate your collaboration on the American Tabletop Awards, and
yeah,
like I welcome all the opportunities that we have to work together. And I think that's probably one of the better things about the industry is that there are just a lot of people who are very down to work together, collaborate, even when we have our own sort of like silos, there's a lot of good overlap. Because at the end of the day, the nice thing about like board gaming is that you do kind of need more than one person to play it, right?
right.
Not to speak ill of solo gaming, but
Yeah. Yeah, no, but you're right. It is like, I mean, we are gamers, at our hearts. And to play games besides solo games, I mean, you are going to have to connect with others. And it's just a natural thing. Like, hey, it's very collaborative, it's very cooperative, because if you're just sitting by yourself doing things, I mean, solo gaming, yeah, you can do everything by yourself if you wanted to, but that's just not my jam. I like people. I genuinely enjoy people's company, and I like playing games with others, so.
yeah. No, I'm very much the same way. One thing that does help me a lot though is that I have finally, fingers crossed, after like months, it took me a whole year to get back to this point, but I finally have a backlog of like games that are reviews that I've written enough time in the future that I am like safe for more than 2 weeks at a given time.
Oh,
So I'm
nice.
I'm almost 4 weeks ahead now, and it's never been better because I'm just like,
That
ah,
Wow. That
yeah,
see that's
it's
Now that's my dream, Eric. Like I'm just like I do stuff weekly and I try to get ahead a couple of days and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I'm not ahead anymore. Like that, oh my gosh, that's my dream right there. Be at
oh
least
yeah.
2 weeks ahead.
My problem is what always happens is I get 4 weeks ahead, and then something is just like, hey, buddy, you know that video game Hades that you really like? And I'm like, yeah, it's amazing. Like, what if you did only that for the next 4 weeks? And I'm like, that sounds pretty good. And then 4 weeks later, I'm just like, oh no, my backlog. Like, my buffer. I'm out again. Yeah, thankfully I had an emergency stash of reviews that I wrote like a few years ago that I was like, well, I'm not 100% sure when these are going to get released, but at least I've got them in case something like unfathomably bad happens.
Yeah.
And then in March, I was like, "Oh, this is why I wrote these." And so that
Yes. There
that
you
gave me
go.
enough of a runway that I could at least collect myself, and so now I'm in a place where I can finally like start producing content on a regular basis again, which is
Right.
good.
Right. Nice.
Yeah, oof. But
Ooh.
yeah, we are both content creators, so we can complain a little bit in the very public forum that we're now in. what do you
Yeah.
what do you think is the most challenging part of being a content creator in sort of any medium, since you, I would argue, have expertise across mediums?
Thanks. The biggest thing I think there's two things I can think of. Number one, the time to do everything you want, right?
Right.
There's just not enough hours in the day, right? So that's the big for myself personally. That's a big challenge. I think another challenge for content creators is payment, getting paid for what you do, right?
Yeah.
Can we talk about that a little bit?
Sure.
So The whole thing is, how do you get paid for your work? How do we get paid for our work as content creators? That's the question that we constantly have to ask ourselves and hopefully get answered, right?
Mhm.
I do believe that more publishers are starting to come around to the idea of marketing, that they need to pay for marketing, which is a service that many of us provide, as content creators, whether it's video, audio, or written work or live streaming work.
Mhm.
I would like to see that expand in the near future because it's something we are taking time out of our lives, and it is work. As much as we enjoy games and as much
Mhm.
fun as we have, it is still work.
Mhm.
The time we spent building computers, putting up mics, putting up cameras, putting up lights, learning games, teaching games, finding people to play games with us, doing all the editing, writing these things. It's a lot of work. And
Mhm.
again, I love it. I enjoy it. If I didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't be doing it. I'd just be playing games and you'd never see my face again. Maybe that's what
Right.
people would prefer. I don't know. But
I doubt that.
honestly, I would like to see the industry grow and embrace all of us as content creators. I mean, it's helping them, right, market their games. And I don't
Mhm.
I don't feel like all companies have really embraced what is a tremendous resource in all of us content creators,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah, and I think that'll eventually lead to some segmentation, right? So like the idea of criticism versus promotion is
Mhm.
like a contentious topic that we don't have to get into in too much depth on here, but
Thank you.
just the idea of like things like publisher sponsorships or Patreon accounts or figuring out like we have definitely made some jokes. Nothing's fully materialized, but jokes about like, oh, eventually, this show is going to be so popular that I'll have to put like ads in between some of the segments. What will that look like? Because this is very much not it's not a review or a really editorial standpoint. It's much more of like conversations between people. So I think that would fall more into the promotion camp than the criticism camp. But getting a firmer division between those and getting sort of rules and guidelines set up for both things, I think is going to be the place where the industry starts heading as it grows in size and scope. And it's going to be really interesting to see what the overall outcomes of those things look like. Because it will lead to things like making it easier for new content creators to get started because there will
Yeah.
actually be guidelines and rails for people to get on if they want to get on that track. Or things like maybe it will be possible to get housing at Gen Con. Who knows? It's a
Right.
mystery.
Yeah, and I think I'm glad you brought that up, Eric. The whole notion of this next generation of content creators, right? Everything that we do now, right? This is, what I'm hoping is that we're building a path for others to follow, right? And
Right.
I've already seen, like, I was just on Kids Splaining. These are two young boys, 8 and 10. Their parents have built a studio in their house, and they do board game reviews and board
Right.
game. They're creating content at 8 and 10 years of age, and they had me on their podcast, right? And it was fantastic. And
Mm-hmm.
I look at that like, hey, the stuff that we're doing now, we're creating the guidelines and everything, or we're helping, talk about it. So at least when they're getting older and of age, then hey, these are what these content creators did. We can get paid this certain amount of money, or we follow these type of guidelines. We can get the housing at Gen Con,
Right.
2030 or whatever,
Yeah, I think if we start working on housing now, we might be able to get housing for Gen Con in 2030, but it might still
right?
be a little bit dicey by then. But yeah, no, I think that also part of it is just that I think that I don't know about you, but I assume I assume we feel similarly, but I feel like we also owe it to that next generation just because I'm only in this because I was fortunate enough to have people from the like people who are already content creators when I started. I think they will beat me up if I refer to them as the previous generation. But people who are already creating content when I first started creating content help me and give me advice and like help me scaffold stuff out. And so like, it comes back to that rising tide thing we were talking about earlier, which is like we were lifted into this spot by other folks. So like when we see people who are trying to come into the content creation space, we owe it to the people who helped us and the people who are coming in to also help them on to the next thing. Because I mean, people are going to come around who are making content that is just incredible, and if we don't invest in them early, they're going to burn out, they're going to leave the industry, and we're going to miss out on the opportunity to really consume some like amazing photography, amazing video, amazing like written content, amazing podcasts. And I think that's going to be a real shame if we're not ready to be able to provide that support at an industry level.
Yeah, I love the word you use, invest, right? We are investing in the future generations of content creators, and even like amongst our peers. We invest in our peers as well. People
Right.
who do different things, and maybe they're written or audio or whatever, but we help them out any way we can. And that's, again, Michelle and I always talk about this. I love being part of that. As someone reaches out, hey, can you do this? I was absolutely, let me help you do this. Or I'll reach out to someone, hey, can you help me with this computer issue I'm having? And they'll be glad to do it. I love that about this industry, and I love that we can be a part of influencing as far as the next generation goes. It's like, hey, hopefully they'll remember so and so did this back in the day, and then they'll pay it forward, basically.
Right, exactly. And that improves the industry as a whole, which
Yeah.
I think is important.
Yeah, I think it's important too to like you were saying, uplift those voices, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that next generation, they do see, people of color and women who are contributing, these things to an industry that might not always be open to, or that was not always open to, people of color or women. I want to see that, and I want to see us continue to uplift and promote those voices.
Absolutely, because getting a diverse perspective allows us to potentially see content in different lenses than you and I might not be able to necessarily like resonate with, right?
Yep.
Like even now we're getting new content from new voices, even on like the game design side, on the review and content side, that is just so much different than stuff I would say that we saw like 5 years ago when we were both getting started.
Right.
And I think that's good. It's excellent.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited to see, because if you asked me 5 years ago what the state of like the tabletop industry would be like now, I would not be able to give you a good answer. And I'm excited because the gap between what I thought it would be in 2015 versus what it is now means that a similar gap exists between where we are now and what it's going to look like in 2025, right?
So true. Yes.
And I think that we have a responsibility to kind of work on making sure that when it gets to 2025, we've got a situation that's better than what it is now, right?
Agreed 100%. That's, it's like in life, I mean, it's the whole, if anyone goes like, camping or whatever, going outdoors, you make a trek or whatever, and you go to the site, you want to leave it in better condition than when you were there, right? Yeah. So similar thing.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Well, I'm excited to see where we go from here, just in terms of like a lot of content. I'm seeing a lot of like changes happening in terms of like different things happening at the publisher level, different things happening even the content creator level. It'll be really interesting to see how things shake out as like we move forward.
Yeah, and I think that's a cool thing too. Is like as things change as content creators, publishers do see this stuff. They do. I don't know if all of them respond, but a lot of them do say, "Hey, this is happening in content creation. Maybe we should either change or adapt to what's happening out there." So that's a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, because it'll be interesting to see. I imagine, so maybe if you asked me like last year, there are always like trends in gaming that pop up, like roll and riots or asymmetric play. I'm gonna be really interested to see how many like remote friendly games start coming out in probably 2021, 2022, just as a response to all this.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like I don't know if it started before COVID or it just it's obviously I just feel like there's more solo variants now included, right? Or even if they're not included in the game itself, I see now on BGG designers, hey, this is my game that was released pre-COVID. You can now play it post-COVID because I have this solo variant, right? And I think a great example, Isla Cats. That game, I love that game. I played it right before COVID shut things down. And then they designed a remote edition, which I enjoyed just as much. I think it's fantastic.
I definitely 100% thought that I like played it like 2 years ago.
Really?
Like I was like, well, Owl of Cats has been out for a while, hasn't it? Like it came out in like 2019, and I'm like, oh,
wow,
it's been this year for a while.
Yeah, right. Time has no meaning, folks.
Oh gosh, that's what keeps happening to me. I'm just like, people are like, how are you? I'm like, oh, time's a flat circle. Like,
yeah,
just like, I'm like, I just have all of these games that I'm like in my brain, I'm like, oh yeah, Pandemic Legacy Season 0 has been out for like, a few months, right?
Yeah.
No, I think it came out like a couple days ago. I'm very tired.
Yeah, it was funny because a buddy of mine, he said, hey, Pandemic Zero, Legacy Season 0 just came out. And I'm like, same thing. I was like, haven't I had that copy since the start of this year? And I was like, oh, you're right. It's okay. Yeah. Yeah, time has no meaning, Eric. I mean,
Oh yeah,
it's
no, it's
2020.
becoming a problem because it's hard for me to like track when review copies arrive.
Hmm.
Because if you asked me like, oh, you've got Pandemic Legacy Season 0 behind you, when did you get that in the mail? And I'm like, I I don't remember because I'm also trying to track days by like when I go to sleep and when I wake up. But now I'm napping more often, and so that's creating day divisions where it doesn't exist. Like I took a nap earlier today, so now in my brain today is Tuesday, and
Oh
it's
my gosh.
not.
Oh my God.
And it's really bad. It's not good. Like we're
Yeah.
uh,
As much as I love naps, yeah, you got to be careful. Like, make sure you know what day it is first, right?
yes. It's gonna be a whole new world of stuff pretty soon. But on that topic, so I know that a number of the newer things that you've done have sprung up as a direct result of everything being kind of shut down. How much of this stuff do you think you're going to carry forward once? I wish I could say knock on wood, but I don't think I have anything that's like actually wood nearby. This house is mostly. This is probably wood. Sure, why not? We'll call it
Sure.
that. Once hopefully things start to renormalize.
Yeah, I want to continue doing most, if not all, of what I do now. I think, and I never would have guessed this, but I really enjoy live streaming. It's
Mhm.
fun, and Twitch has been a big part of that. There's a really nice, really fun Twitch community of board gamers out there. It's very small, it's super niche,
Mhm.
but thanks to like people like the brothers Murph and others who have led the way, they have created a space there where a lot of different types of gamers, board gamers, are on there now, and
Mhm.
I would like to continue. I mean, I will continue doing that as long as it's fun and as long as it's engaging and stuff. It's just really cool to connect with gamers through Twitch and through live streaming.
Mhm.
It's just been not only fun for me, but for my family too. And that's
Right.
been, yeah, one of the biggest surprises. And very fortunate that my family enjoyed live streaming with me. And it was basically, we just opened up our game nights to people on the internet, as a way to, hey, everyone's sort of stuck at home. Why not just hang out with us, and we'll chat about, we always talk about food at our house, so we'll talk about what are y'all eating, what recipes are you doing these days. So post COVID or post whenever things get somewhat normal again, I believe live streaming will still be at the top
Oh,
of my list.
absolutely.
Yeah. I've had so much fun with it, and I don't. I mean, again, maybe things will change, but I don't see it changing as far as like I still enjoy it. I really appreciate being able to connect and hang out with folks through Twitch and other platforms.
No, that's great. That's awesome. Well, since I imagine you have so much free time, are there other aspects of this sort of growing content empire that you'd like to grow or cultivate or develop as we move towards 2021? I think we're basically November now, so I can start asking like, do you have any board game content New Year's resolutions? Since
Yeah, that's
the difference between December 31st, 2020 and January 1st, 2021 matters a ton to you and I who have lost all meaning of time.
right. Yeah. This whole 2020 blur, as we like to call
Yeah,
it.
you've seen a lot of the memes that are just sort of like me at 11:59 on December 31st, 2020 being like, "Yeah," and then me at like 11 like 60 on December 31st, 2020 and there's like, "Oh no." That's kind of how I
Right.
feel like this year is going. Like, welcome to December 32nd. Like just
Exactly. Yeah.
uh
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's so true. Um, as far as resolutions, the main one I have, the one I can think of, is just to improve the content that I do in every aspect. I want to, I always look at it like I want to be a better writer. I want to be a better podcaster. I want to be a better live streamer. And not only from just a creative standpoint, but also from a technical standpoint. I want to have a good foundation of, hey, I need to figure out, certain ways this technology works or whatever. But also, I want to improve as a writer. I want to improve as a podcaster or live streamer. I want to be able to connect with folks in an improved way, whether it's just um, making it easier for people to access my content, perhaps. I just saw recently, this blew me away. Girls Game Shelf, one of their live streams had closed captioning,
mm.
live captioning. I'm like, that's brilliant. Like, I think about that. My parents, they watch movies with captions on it. Like, that's how they watch
Oh
movies.
yeah.
And I
That's how I
find
watch
myself,
movies.
yeah, I watch, I'm not gonna lie, I watch them with captions too, because it's easier for me to hear, certain people speak. And I thought, wow, that's brilliant. Like I want to do that for my live streams and videos as well. I want to have captions like
Mhm.
that, especially live streaming. I think that's just brilliant. So yeah, I think that's my one resolution is just to improve, and everything. You could be all, I want to improve my life, whatever, but specifically, I want to improve the content that I create, through, again, different aspects of it, technical and also creative. I want to be able to create better content overall.
Mhm. Well, I mean, I think the content you make is already great, so I look forward to seeing what even better looks like. But yeah, no,
Thanks, Eric.
I completely agree. I think that getting a lot of work done on captioning, especially just like with the huge amount of video content that's coming out, like the lack of captions is kind of an accessibility barrier to a lot of people that we want to
Yes.
be including. And I know that my videos don't have captions either, and start looking into like a captioning service.
Yeah.
But it's something that I'm definitely interested in seeing more about. I would honestly love if there was some sort of like content creator, like industry standard for just like captioning services, because I feel like that's going to be huge moving forward.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it'd be fantastic, but again, how do we move that forward? And there's another thing too I think about constantly is I have colorblind issues, and how do we continue to push for that? In with publishers, like make your games more colorblind friendly, right?
Right.
Because I think there's been some movement, but again, I don't think there's been enough. Because I
No.
still get games to this day, I'm sure you do too, where I look at the red and green, I cannot tell the difference between them. Like all it takes is, for a lot of games, all it takes is one simple icon. This is the red icon, this is the green icon. Make them different, and then
Mhm.
players can, deal with that. So that's one thing it's not really a resolution of mine, but maybe my resolution is to advocate for it more, right? And
It
take
would be
out,
nice to have. I mean, like I don't have necessarily like a color vision deficiency, but I do a lot of my gaming in like low light conditions for photography reasons. And
yep,
if you're having a color blind issue with your game, it's gonna also be present in like low light conditions for me. So I
right,
was playing a game and I'm like, I can't tell these two cards apart without turning on the light. And that makes
yep,
it impossible to do photography. So I have to basically like keep the full game state in my brain when I'm trying to play in the dark. Which is
yeah,
like, it's definitely a problem that only I have in the sense of like, this is a self-inflicted problem. It's incredibly specific and honestly a little weird, but it is definitely something that makes me more cognizant of. I imagine this causes issues for people that also like struggle with this if I'm also having problems with it
right,
just in my like,
yeah.
normal day to day.
Yeah. Hey, before we continue here, what is your resolution, Eric? I want to turn the tables a
Ooh,
little bit. Do
ooh,
you
good
have a
question.
resolution
Good
for
question.
2020?
Well,
As a fellow content creator, right?
uh,
What is your
uh,
2021 resolution?
me loudly. Who dares ask me a question on my interview show?
I just made myself at home here. I was like,
Oh
let's
gosh, you came to my house and rearranged my furniture.
sort of like a game that we just created.
Ugh, I'm so mad about that. No, I think that so part of it was actually something I already did this year. So like, what I really wanted to do is I wanted to dig a little bit deeper into photography. Like I think that like I like doing photography. I like playing around with the photos and seeing what I can come up with. And I think that in the past like couple months, I've started experimenting with like backdrops with like reflective surfaces, and I like really enjoyed some of the stuff that I've produced from that. And I'd love to see if there are other ways that I can change it up without compromising sort of the like really strong brand identity that is, but what if I put stuff in this, a circle, the easiest of shapes.
Right. Oh,
But
that's great.
yeah, I'm trying to explore what that would look like, or just be a little bit more experimental with it. I also generally my New Year's resolution is always consistency, so it's always I want to keep producing content at the same quality and at the same like frequency that I've been doing in the past. Um, I think let me see here, mathematically, no, I don't think so. I was very close if I had kept the right numbers for this year. I think I may still be able to do it for next year, but I think we're nearing 1,000 reviews. I'm at I
Wow.
think
Wow.
685 as of this week, and so we're within talking distance of it. So if
Wow.
I do another two a week for a couple years. My goal was originally 1,000 by the end of 2021, but that would require me to have been keeping up at the like 4 a week I was doing pre-pandemic, which is just not feasible. I just don't play enough games for that.
Yeah.
But it'll probably happen in the next year or two, is what we're sort of currently looking at. So that'll be exciting whenever that happens.
Yeah, I did this mind blown. I can't even fathom 1,000 reviews. So how long have you been doing the reviews again, Eric? Like
About 5 years as well. So I started
5 years.
in July of 2015. So it's been a
And
little bit.
you're at six. What is it now?
685. I only know because I published this morning, so I
Yeah.
have a good sense of the numbers.
So basically over 100 reviews a year.
Yeah.
Wow. That is so impressive, man. I can't
Thank you.
Wow, amazing. And it's not like it's like just little tidbits either. These are like full on fantastic reviews, great photography. Again, kudos to you, my friend. That's just
I try to pivot down to like the mini review format, which I keep making fun of myself about because someone's like, "Oh, hey, I saw that you wrote a mini review." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm trying these mini reviews." And they're like, "It's 2,000 words, Eric." And I'm like, "Yeah." It would have been 4,000 other. Like I'm trying.
Yeah.
I have too many words, and my editor is a slacker. So
there you go.
ugh, because he is me. But yeah, no, I think that's probably what I'm thinking about trying to do is either something along the lines of photography, trying to see what stuff I can do with late night table talk. It seems like I'm having enough fun with it that I should like monthly, like doing this once a month is a fairly low lift for me. So, and then also trying to come up with a better way to like set up like the whole like content thing that I'm doing for the future. So talking more with publishers, maybe doing some like consultation or stuff like that, seeing if I can like work ways around in that. Not in a way that I want to like impact or leave my day job. I quite like my day job, but just in a way that I'm like, okay, I've been doing this for a while. I think I've got some good experience. What can I do to hook in a little bit more so I can start like doing a better job of uplifting new people in the industry and also working to like, do my best to have a good impact on the industry that's done a lot for me.
Right. Oh, that's fantastic. Hey, I'm gonna ask one more question if you don't mind.
Sure, go for it.
Your show now. Yeah. So as far as this show, was this something that you've had in mind for a while, or was this strictly something came about because of COVID?
I think frankly I was like shit posting a while back and made some joke about doing a like late night talk show style thing, and a few people were like, "Oh, well, you should actually do it." And I'm like, "Maybe I will." Maybe like, no, like, maybe you should. And I'm like, I guess we're getting contentious about it, but either way, I finally was in a place where I had like a bit of a like private filming area. I had the camera equipment because I needed to upgrade my camera equipment because I was working from home all the time, and then I had like the audio stuff, and I was like, maybe I should just try it. And so we did the preseason stuff. I talked to 5 people, or well, not 5 people, technically talked to 6 people, but talked to 5 groups of people. I had a good time with it, and so I'm having a good time now, right? So yeah. I feel like that was kind of what motivated it. It's a little bit longer form content, but all of the content I produce is longer form. I can't help it. I'm just like naturally very wordy. But
this is on brand.
Yeah, it keeps the brand. So yeah, all of it kind of came together just out of a desire to get a chance to talk about games in a different context. So like when I'm reviewing, I'm very much like, here is a game. We are going to talk about it. We're going to look at it. We're going to piece it apart in terms of setup, gameplay, strategy, pros, cons, and mas, and then my overall thoughts. And that is a good lens, in my opinion, to look at a game through. But it is not the only lens that you could talk about like industry stuff, right? So what ends up happening is like, I was on your show. We had a great time. We chatted, had a blast. I, do hangouts with folks for a variety of different reasons in the industry. Maybe we'll like play games. It's the conversation aspect that I kind of miss, and I don't get that much this year because we're not doing really in-person conventions. We're not really seeing each other in person. So I felt like having something that was a little bit, I was going to say informal, but we're both in suits, so it's kind of hard to say that. Having something where the structure is maybe a little bit less formal and a little bit less rigid, I think allows us to still have those connections while still having conversations that I think are relevant to the industry as a whole.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's exactly what we're doing. We're having conversation here, and we're nice and relaxed in our suits and
Absolutely.
yeah, in our dress up clothes, but at the same time, it's stuff that is relevant, to
Yeah.
what's going on today in the industry and outside of the industry. So
Right. Yeah,
yeah,
and that's kind of the perspective that I wanted to bring in was just like I think that there's a lot of cool people in the industry. There's a lot of cool people to talk to, and if I do one of these a month, I've already got a list of like 50 people that I'm excited to talk to. So I'll be doing this for the better part of 5 years. So
nice.
we'll see how the once a month. I keep hearing like that thing in the back of my head that's like you could probably do this every other week, and I'm like, no, not until I've done enough of these. But
Yeah.
naturally, like everything else, we're gonna start building up that buffer, and then once we've got a few buffer, then we'll think about whether or not to expand it. Currently, no problems though. So
I love it.
yeah.
I'm so glad you're doing this, man. It's so cool.
Oh yeah, no, it's a blast. But speaking of shows, I was on top three at three with you and had a blast with it. But
Yeah.
I figure if we're pitching dreams at this point, do you have any like dream guests you'd love to have on the show, tabletop or not, just kind of like moving good vibes into the ether?
Yeah. So this was this is a good question. I I wish I had like someone. I don't know. I thought of a couple of different people. Number one, because and this is just fresh in my mind because I'm an LA Lakers fan for life, and although the whole sports ball thing I've sort of fallen off of the last few years, I still enjoy rooting for my Lakers and
Sure.
LeBron James, the best player of his generation. I think it would be fun to have him on a top three at three, talking about what games he plays. I'm curious. He's got children. Do they play Catan? Do they play, backgammon? I don't know. These are things I'd love to talk to him about. As far as gaming is related, though, I think the actress name is Kristen Bell. She was
Oh
in
yeah,
Dating Sarah Marshall.
good
I
place.
know she plays Catan. I've seen the Instagram photos. They have put that out there. I'm curious to see like her and I forget her husband's name.
Dak Shepard, I believe.
Thank you, Dexter. Wasn't he
Yeah.
on like what was that show?
He
The
was also on
MTV.
The Good Place. I really
Oh,
have like my entire brain is just yes, characters from The Good Place.
good
But
place. Okay, yeah. So there you go. Um, that I would love to know what games they play. It would be fun to talk to them. These I guess are they A-list celebrities or whatever. Just talk about what games are y'all playing. I saw you at the Emmys or Oscars, and they had a Catan board on their table. I thought that was amazing. I'm like,
oh yeah,
that's so. They're nerds like just like us. It's like
the
so
stars,
those are
just like
two.
us.
Sorry.
I was joking. The stars, they're just like us.
That's exactly what I was thinking of. But yeah, those are two people I think it would be fun to interview. But I wouldn't want to like. I thought about who I wouldn't want as like political figures or whatever. I don't know. It's just not my jam. I wouldn't want to mix politics and games, even though some people. Maybe I shouldn't talk about that.
Live your best life, friend.
Yeah.
I think that your show, your rules is a perfectly fine standard to set.
Thanks. Yeah, so LeBron would be one just because I would, I want to know what games a four-time NBA champion, what he plays with his family,
Mhm.
because I can't just, I can't imagine him just showing up from a day at the office and, hey, let's go play some basketball. No, it's like, you know, let's play whatever game they have. So yeah, that's a tough. I mean, is there? I'm going to turn it around on you, Eric. Who's your big star, big get for your show? Who would you like? See, when I don't have a good
Honestly,
answer,
honestly, I hardly ever think about it because I'm very much
yeah.
I never plan for growth, and I think that's probably an issue. But I'm always just like, yes, this thing will be this size forever, and that's about kind of how I operate.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, just in terms of talking about, so like, I know that to contrast, I'm always interested in sort of the like modern interpretations of like gaming or how gaming collides with like modern culture. So I know that like um, Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez was just doing a. I don't know why I gestured that way. I think like when you're thinking about like the direction that someone is in, you're like, oh yeah, over in D.C., which I am almost positive is not this way relative to where I'm pointing, but that's neither
Right.
here nor there. But I know that she was involved in doing like a Get Out the Vote initiative on Twitch the other day where she streamed Among Us with a few people, and I think that's really interesting. Just talking about like the conversation that I'd be interested in having there is more about the idea of gaming and platform and how you use gaming as a platform to get messages out to a community, especially high priority messages, and how like voter registration initiatives could use platforms like Twitch or games like from different gaming companies to think more about how to incentivize people to participate in the civic process. So, I mean, when you're thinking about it, right, like we're talking about the future of like political engagement and like voter registration around different platforms that are popping up. Like imagine something as simple as like working with Gen Con or Origins to have like voter registration available at these conventions for like, you could register to vote in the state that you live in, not the state that you're currently in, or something like that. And even just thinking about how to increase engagement, right? So like I don't necessarily think we're going to see, like Joe Biden popping on a like Ravensburger stream for a game of Strike. Although, like again, I'd be fascinated to watch it, but I think you are going to see things start popping up on Twitch in the video gaming space as more and more high-profile folks engage in like live streaming to try and reach their audience directly. Because like we're kind of still on the cusp of it, because I mean like if we're talking like 10 or 15 years ago, right, we're not talking about like celebrities who actually like have a Twitter or have like their social presence is just them appearing on talk shows. It's not really them engaging directly with folks. But there are a lot of people who use Twitter, for better or for worse, as like their primary means of interacting with folks. And that's, I think, signifying a pretty structural shift in how we think about the way that we engage with people who are operating on like higher tiers of celebrity.
Yeah.
So I think that in the sense of I'd be really interested to talk to some of the people who are like sort of pushing in that space to see what their visions for that interaction segment is going to be moving forward, maybe even outside of a board gaming context. But I would also be interested to see it inside of a board gaming context. I know there are a lot of folks who are very interested in it, right? Like there's like Kristen Bell and Dak Shepard that we were talking about. I assume there are other folks who are also playing games, and it would be interesting to hear how they factor that into the work they're doing and how they see the intersection of like technology changing and like societal changes driving forward where they're going to move as we like progress past this year. If that's a good answer to your question.
That's a fantastic answer to my question. Much better than I answered it. I was thinking as well that, the guests that I've had on my show and the people I've been able to live stream with, I've been, again, it's the same word I've used. I've been very fortunate that the guests that I've had, I'm genuinely interested in them sharing their stories, right? And they don't have to be big celebrity or people that everyone knows. Like I had a chance to interview my friend, local game buddy, my buddy Daryl. He uses games as a PE teacher. He teaches physical education to elementary kids, and he uses games in that. And I thought that was so fascinating. Or someone like another friend of mine, local friend, my friend Lexi, who suffers from lupus, and how she uses solo gaming as a way to deal with her situation. Those stories to me fascinate me, and those are the ones that you don't have to be a big celebrity or anything like that. It's the stories that are what I enjoy the most about doing these type of shows. But yeah, I think what you said about the AOC on Twitch is brilliant. I love seeing her do that. It's one way of engaging and getting people, like you were saying, to vote, go out and vote. This is one way that politicians can relate to the younger generation. Why not use that tool?
It's going to be fascinating to see how that changes and evolves, because I think that like it also could have changed in a couple ways. Not to get too deep into like political analysis on this a board game talk show, but just just the fact of the matter is that it was the second most concurrent viewers on a Twitch stream, I think, ever. I think it was second only to Drake and Ninja on Twitch, and that like acknowledging that as a huge confluence of a couple things, like sort of collective political capital, a fair amount of like influencer culture stuff, and just like the synthesis of where those things lie, means that people might start seeing Twitch as a way to, because I think we've already seen it some. Like I know that Elizabeth Warren, I think, did a fair bit of like Instagram live sort of content during the like initial primary period. And I think we're going to start seeing some politicians choosing to engage with their audiences through more like live content. I'm not 100% sure they're going to, again, move into like live streaming a board game. But what a like fascinating look at a fascinating look at an experience if you saw like a politician or a like high profile figure do something similar to what we're doing or what you were even doing, where it's like, oh, I live stream board games with my family, I want to turn my like open up my game night to people, and seeing other people use that as like an interesting way to engage with an audience outside of their like larger platform.
Absolutely.
I think
Yeah.
it's going to be
Yeah.
fascinating to see how that sort of thing turns out. Like,
Yeah.
I have no idea where it's going, but it's going to be an interesting ride to get there.
Right. Yeah. And like, 10 years ago, if you would have told me that, politicians would use social media as a main way to get their message out, I would have told you were crazy,
Exactly.
and here we are, so
Yeah.
who knows in the next 5 years, 10 years, what these live streams are going to look like, you know?
Yeah. So it's really interesting to see those sorts of like not even like a goalpost shifting, but the sorts of like paradigm shifts that are occurring in the like digital landscape as people are thinking about how they interact with like their larger audience. But
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
it'll be wild. I'm really excited to see where it goes next. But
Yeah.
so I know I can say this because it'll likely embarrass you a bit, and it is my show. But according to both the notes that I've taken and the overwhelming majority of people that I've talked to prior to filming, most of them being like, "Oh, you're talking to Ruel? What a nice guy." You are probably one of the most well-liked people in the tabletop space. So I'm saying that that's not a question. I'm saying that as a fact. So congratulations. That's already on the record. While I'd love the secret to your popularity, I think a more actionable question for the people watching the show is really, um, we've talked a lot about new content creators and new folks in the tabletop space. Uh, what is your advice for those folks that are in the sense of how do they build effective relationships when they're coming in? And what would you recommend they keep in mind when they're networking and trying to grow as content creators by interacting with other people who already exist in the community?
Well, first, I want to thank you for your kind words, Eric. And I just
It's in my notes. It's a fact. I can't.
no, I truly appreciate that. It's genuinely very, very, very nice. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I can't thank you enough. And to everyone who said that, that's so kind. As far as an actual item, um, I I live by the golden rule, right? I treat people the way I want to be treated, and I think for people who are either getting into content creation or thinking about getting into it, you know, it's that golden rule. If you want to be engaged with, if you want people to be engaged with your work, engage with them, and do it in a real manner. Like, I mean, you know me personally outside of this. Like, what you see is what you get. Like, I'm not going to put up a front, and part of it's maybe I'm a little older. I don't put up with, I'm not going to put up a front because I don't have anyone to impress. At this age, it's who you see is what you get, and I think it's part of, you have to be able to, I don't know, be comfortable in your own skin, right? And to use that as a way to engage with other folk. Be real about it. Ask questions. That's been one of the things I'm proud of is as I continue to do things in the industry, I'm always asking questions like, oh, I didn't know how to do this. Can you show me, or can I, help, or can I help you with this? We'll do a trade, right? You'll trade
Mhm.
knowledge for whatever. But it's part of people. I don't know. Yeah, I'm a little like I don't know what to say. Is when people say like I'm a nice guy and everything. I mean, thank my parents, right? My parents, they did a great job. But as far as building relationships, I think the biggest thing is um, be yourself. I mean, engage with people. That right? I mean, and by engaging, I mean genuinely show interest. If you're not interested in anything, don't fake the funk. I mean, just move on, find something that does seem interesting to you, and that'll be more genuine. And people will want to reach out to you, or you want to reach out to people like that. Ask questions, so show genuine curiosity, engage with people, be real. I think that's all I can say about that. I wish I had a better answer, but
No, I think that's still a great answer. I think that I think for better or for worse, a lot of people look for authenticity online, right? Like they want a sense of that from the people that they follow, from the people they interact with, and the people they choose to associate with. And I think that that's something that's very valuable is the is the ability to like, I mean, we can be frank about this. We have probably both played games that we haven't been like super enthusiastic about, and I
Right.
think that shows when we're like, if we're trying to make content about it. If you're like, yeah, this game was fine,
A
like
game. Yeah.
like for me, if I timed it right, if I like actually said, okay, I'm going to write an entirely new review of The Crew, and I'm going to write an entirely new review of a game that I don't like. Doesn't matter how short the game is, doesn't matter how easy it is to play. This one's going to take me about twice as long as the review of The Crew, just because I
That's right.
think for me it takes a lot more energy to come up with like, well, here's the thing I didn't like, and here's why I didn't like it, than to tell someone here's an awesome thing and here's why I think it's awesome.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to be enthusiastic about something, right? Than
Right,
trying to generate that
right, and to be
enthusiasm, or trying to
genuinely
generate,
enthusiastic.
yeah, trying to generate some kind of critique. Yeah, it's much tougher when it's something you don't like. So, yeah, that there it is right there. I mean, just be genuine, be real. It's like,
Hmm.
you're not trying. No one's trying to impress anyone here. Just do your thing.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
think that's totally reasonable. Well, I know that I've kept you on here for a while, but I wanted to
Oh,
say that I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the show. Thank you so much, and I really had a blast talking with you.
yeah.
So, yeah,
Thank
it's
you, Eric.
been.
I really appreciate the opportunity. And yeah, anytime we can hang out and talk about games, I mean, I'm always down.
Oh
And
yeah,
I am so fortunate to, be your friend, not only in the board game space, but, like just hanging out like this. Like, even though we're
likewise.
recording, we don't have to record it. We can just, hang out.
Yeah,
It's all
exactly.
good.
Yeah, no. Let's find some time for some gaming soon. I know that
Please.
we have a both of us are probably going to be fairly busy through the end of the year as
Yeah.
we're now
Yeah.
inside of the like holiday super collider as well. So that's going
Yeah.
to be an exciting time.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, I just really appreciate the chance to have you on. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Well, that's all the time we have for you tonight. We'll catch you next time on Late Night Table Talk.